This is the real Bad Juice Cast.
Unfortunately, Wolfman couldn't join us for this segment because he had to leave, but here's me and Lots just shooting the breeze with Tom Sullivan. All right, enjoy.
I was telling lots some of the other stuff you've done. I know you've done D&D books, right, and or worked for some of those.
Or well, not Dungeons and Dragons, but Chaosium Inc. They're Call of Cthulhu games.
Oh, oops, my bad.
Oh, really? Damn.
Yep.
That's even better.
I did that for about 18 years. I don't think they publish any of my stuff. Every once in a while, they'll use a piece of artwork or something, but some compendium or whatever. But they pretty much got a new bunch of artists and everything. But I'm really happy with what I did there. I got good compliments on it, and it's really neat because I go to conventions and take my Evil Dead stuff and a lot of prints, and I've got prints from the pages. I kept the copyrights to the Book of the Dead, and so I have the prints of the pages and some of my concept artwork and posters that I did for Evil Dead, and then I have my Chaosium artwork illustrations because I kept the copyrights to those too, and the originals. I'm big on that. And then so fans come in, and for the Evil Dead Tom Sullivan, they go, "Hey, I got the board game thing of this, the book, the rule book or whatever," and that's always fun to have to discover. There's multiple me's.
Right. Wasn't I read a while back that there's some company that was making unauthorized books or something?
Oh, that's so yeah. There's but that's kind of like what people do on eBay and Etsy. DeviantArts is ripped me off, and boy, if I could actually get paid if they actually bothered to license that, I would be wealthy.
Right.
It's so depressing that according to the copyright laws, you have to maintain a vigilant protection of your stuff, and it's overwhelming. It's in the hundreds at all times.
Jeez.
And it's kind of like hard to be an artist in a world of thieves, because even in filmmaking, films are getting released before they're even in the theaters anymore. And of course, copyright thieves have also pretty much ruined the record industry. As soon as you release something, nobody's paying for it. It's all getting copied on the web and given away for free. And they try to catch it, but it comes and goes so fast, there's just no way to really stop it. And it's demoralizing. It's like every piece of artwork you create, suddenly it's a legal liability. And to actually take somebody to court is, if you're going to, some kids, making a copy of my book and selling it for $100, well, you have to go travel to their jurisdiction, say they're down in California, and then sue them in court there. So you've got the travel expenses. And this is for a book for $100. And if you're actually going to go to court because they want to fight you for some reason, lawyers will tell you, well, that's about $150,000 up front for starters. This is over $100 book. And you go into court, and they say, their lawyer says, well, gee, you're going after my client, but let's go to the internet and see how typed in Book of the Dead, da-da-da, and what do you know, there's 200 of these people selling this stuff all over the place. And why aren't you going after them? And then the judge, and this happens a lot, the judge could go, well, and it's public domain, Mr. Sullivan. You still own the rights to it, but so does everybody else can use it too. And suddenly you're competing with yourself and your copyrights and contracts, and none of that seems to make sense, make it an issue anymore. And it kind of makes, well, then why create anything and put it out there? I mean, it's for yourself, fine, but as soon as you, I've heard that most producers, independent producers, especially horror film producers, they make their films and then they take them and they take the DVDs that they paid to produce and put them in a box and take them to conventions and sell them. And I've heard on average, one of the first 5 people to buy your horror film is going to be somebody who's going to put it on Pirate Bay or start making their own copies and selling them at conventions they go to. And, they just put, this is what they do. And it's kind of, well, then what's the point? How do you ever make your money back, even if you just put $5,000-$10,000 into a thing, and by the time you're selling it, people have already seen it, and maybe they liked it, but you didn't get any money out of it, and how do you make a living at a film if it's some kind of, it's got distribution, but you're not involved?
Right. Well, is it different, let's say like the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, those are like New Line Cinema, so wouldn't, because it's a bigger studio, they would go after like knockoff Freddy gloves or something? Is it because Evil Dead's more of an independent thing? Is there like
the big studios, of course, can have lawyers.
Right.
You don't want to mess with Spielberg or Lucasfilm or the big studios, because they send lawyers into conventions, and they can actually confiscate your illegal Howard the Duck or whatever it is,
right?
whatever your bootlegs are. And if they wanted to, they could take you to court, but usually just a cease and desist kind of thing.
Right.
Because that would be, somebody told me that if I saw somebody selling a Book of the Dead, I could legally confiscate it, but I'm not going to get into a fight in a convention. Because I can only end up looking like an asshole. But I definitely have told people, look, I'm the copyright owner to that, and it's illegal. If you want to give it away to somebody, that's fair use, as a gift.
Right.
But if you sell it, then you're damaging me. And gee, I'm a fan. I didn't know, that kind of thing. Which is the case most of the time. And then there's the serious assholes.
Right.
Who I don't give a crap what you think, come and sue me. And then how do you begin to do that? Because I'm not wealthy.
Yeah. And that's just U.S. law, too. Like, then you have, the other day, me and Lots were looking at, like, restaurant, fast food restaurant knockoffs in, like, China and stuff. And then, like, other stuff they always do.
Yeah, there's a company in South Korea took my the artwork I did for the Anchor Bay Evil Dead Book of the Dead, the rubber model that we did,
Yeah.
and they were selling that, used my artwork, used all my designs, all that stuff, and I should have gotten my paycheck for that, but no, if I want to, I can go to South Korea and take it up there.
Oh, that they stole the molds or something?
No, they just used like images of it.
Oh.
But they used my interior artwork, and because all they had to do was buy one of them and then photograph it and copy it, and
because that happens with toys a lot too. Like Ninja Turtles as example. But they'll get a hold of the molds and then they'll make their own.
Yep, right. And now we've got the laser printing and all that, so that you can buy a toy and then make replicas or your molds or whatever immediately out of it. And how do you compete with that? I mean, as soon as you turn out something, it's sad. Why can't people be honest?
I think it's consumer. It's up to the consumer, I guess, to make the choice.
No, it's a moral failure on our parts. We're not getting it.
Right.
If you don't want any more music, except at a band, except at a concert, that's about the best way musicians can make money anymore. Is hopefully you get a big crowd at a concert, and because it's not in record sales.
Right.
Yeah, there's always a problem, especially these days. But there is a significant audience that does like to have the legitimate product, like the thing that was made by the guy versus just a Chinese knockoff.
Yeah. and hopefully it's got that much more value and actual artistic quality to it than a knockoff. And it's a shame. And then, but then in comic books, there was the whole thing back in the '80s about comic book rights and artists owning the artwork, and certain various levels of copyright ownership. Starting with the whole Superman thing with Schuster and Siegel, and you probably know that story, right? The guys who created Superman were just kind of kids, and they signed it away. And here, this thing that goes on and becomes this huge industry, and then they're making the Christopher Reeve films, and one of them's blind, and they're both like living on welfare, and and here they created a product, a character that made hundreds of millions for DC, and and then movies and stuff, and then Neil Adams and some other comic artists got public attention and said, this isn't right. You should honor these guys, and so they worked out some money for them, I think, and maybe some health insurance or something. But they were already kind of aged at that, elderly at that point, and things started changing. And then later, young artists started, you would get big starts in DC and Marvel and hit it big. And then, the thing is they wanted to keep artwork and create things that they owned rather than working for the man, which is a great way to start, because they've got the distribution and the exposure and all that. But then you get, Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld and, all these sprouting up groups of independent artists producing their own comics. And that's kind of where we're at today, where you go into a comic book store and there's actually tons more comics than they have shelf space for. And, but we're getting a big diverse array, and so they've all got a chance at shelf. You're selecting them. But now that's what drove me was like Frank Frazetta in his interviews. He'd say, just own your stuff and keep your originals, because he did, and for the most part. And now those are incredibly valuable pieces of art. I've kept most of my stuff. Very little actually has gone out, and I've still got the Books of the Dead and original drawings and concepts and posters and things like that. And so now that Evil Dead is at least in stasis for now, but as popular as ever. I mean, what Sam created is lasting, and people want more.
Right. That's why I was making the joke, small little film, because it seems like it's just getting bigger and bigger, as time goes on.
Yeah. 3
and
seasons.
It's all due to fans. Every step of the way of success is 100% the fans. In its initial playing in America, I think it made about $2 million, which can't really cover, the meager advertising costs and the costs of for wallet. Start off in one part of the country and you move it across the country, and so you don't have like 500 prints. You've got a couple dozen, and you kind of go region by region. And but even with that, that's not a whole lot of money, because they couldn't get advertising because of its it had the violence in it, and that would give it an X rating. And if you have X on it on the advertisement, it looks like it's a porno film, which it is. There's 20 frames of breasts in the film, and they went with an unrated film, which still has to carry an unrated thing, which almost is as bad as an X, except most people aren't familiar with the unrated part. And so local papers wouldn't publish reviews or even allow ads. It was just Evil Dead 7 and 9, at the little theater wherever it's playing.
Right.
And it wasn't, it was things like Fangoria and Starlog that had, or not Starlog, Cinefantastique that had articles on it, and that kind of thing. That really, it was the hardcore fans who were tuned into it that sought it out, and we got some great press from Stephen King in Twilight Zone magazine. Saw it
Most
at
grueling experience in terror, something like that. He wrote on it. I remember.
exactly, and Joe Bob Briggs saw it at the same show, and I was, loved it. So got it. It's one of those films that you have to kind of get what's going on. That it's not a comedy, but it's taken things to this extreme, just to kind of rub your face in it,
Right.
Knowing Sam from that era, as I did, it's really a Sam film, and he made us all look really good in it. And but he had the whole film designed out, and didn't necessarily communicate the entire concept to us, except as we went along. But he definitely knew what the hell he was doing, and still does. I think his Spider-Man films are excellent. Oz the Great and Powerful is just
Darkman.
perfect to me. Darkman, I love him. And as a producer, his stuff is everybody's still talking about, Xena and Hercules and even the bad ones.
I think
it was the one.
I think even the Evil Dead remake was well done. For being
Oh,
a remake.
and the TV show. Holy cow.
Yeah.
I think that's the best incarnation of the entire series. It gets all the Evil Dead, the first one had kind of like hardcore feeling to it, and kind of hardcore and dark humor. And then Evil Dead 2 is gory and horror, but then it's got like some comedy to it, like Three Stooges stuff that's sneaking in. And then Army of Darkness is like Three Stooges.
Right.
There's really not a scare in it, and it's more spectacle, gore and everything. But they all have a different tone. And then Fede Alvarez did his not a remake or a reboot; it's a sequel. I stand by that. But he does his film, and it's just hardcore horror completely, and it also took all the goofiness out of it because they didn't want somebody else to make a Sam Raimi film. They have a perfectly good working Sam Raimi who can do those, all day long,
Right.
and they wanted somebody with their approach to it, and his was, let's take the goofiness out and let's make this like, and this is one of Sam's things, is you got to hit the audience in the head with a sledgehammer to get their attention. And so you need that brutalness, to really, you think you're going to come for chuckles? Well, not in this one. And when I saw that woman's arm fall off, I wanted my mommy. I mean, this is like, wow,
Yeah.
hardcore. And I really like what he did. But it's definitely a reboot. And the secret is in the Books of the Dead. My book, Skinned in Human Flesh, which is my idea, it was my backstory to that was, it was like a Leonardo da Vinci of ancient Sumeria had figured out some kind of scientific method for the occult, so that he could figure out what worked and what didn't and how to improve things through experimentation. And he writes his results down in this book, using it as his the way to influence the local tyrant. And I bet he was successful, because who's heard of Sumerians lately? They're kind of extinct. And in Fede's book, Fede called me. They wanted to possibly use my book, and we kind of changed the concept, but they went with their book, and from looking at what they came up with, their book is clearly European, like 15th century European, because it's got printing in it, like etchings or woodcuts or something, and or block printing, that kind of thing. And it also has references to Beelzebub and Satan and whatever. And to me, that book is written by some esoteric Christian cult, like Knights Templar or some wing group that was made that somehow the Evil Dead plague, the demonization, the possession of people, somehow occurred in 15th century or later, or earlier rather, Europe, and that the Catholic Church organized these people to kind of take this on, and they came up with their book. My book is the How to Make It book, and their book is the How to Stop It book. And their book also had been possessed by several people who became obsessed with it and couldn't help but write inside it. Don't read the words and all this stuff, and the rantings in different languages even. I had to study it when I did the Via Vision book. They had a four-movie, the 4 Evil Dead anthology, and they had me come up with the Book of the Dead with 16 illustrations, and every 4 illustrations more or less corresponded to each of the 4 films. So the last 4 pages were like my parodies of the Fede Alvarez book. So I studied theirs and came up with my own designs and my little something I started back in the Anchor Bay books of the Dead. I would disguise I call it Bullscript. That's the language that I used in Evil Dead for the most part. Mm-hmm. These bad hieroglyphs. It's gobbledygook in the actual book. But when it came time to, turn it into a commercial product, I thought, hey, well, I'll be clever and I'll put in secret hidden messages. So the alphabet is basically Evil Deadized or Book of the Dead styled English letters, and I remove spaces in between the letters, so in between the words, and but I followed the shape of the paragraphs in the original book, so it just kind of goes on till it ends. You have to figure out what the words are and then where the spaces are, and basically what is revealed in the hidden messages is what a smartass I actually am. And I have just visit lovely Kandar Castle. And there's one with a picture of hands of an arm melting, kind of representing the meltdown sequence at the end. And it says raw, medium, well. There's a picture of demon hands, and it says employees must wash hands before returning to place. Thanks. My buddy Pat Reese, he was the bookbinder of the Dead. We make replicas. He came up with that one. It's a good one. And just things like that, but it's all through the book. And then I carried that on in the Evil Dead 2 book I did for Anchor Bay, and then in Via Vision had me do a book or two, and just came up with fun stuff. And then I hear from people, do you have the cipher for all that? And now you get to do it like a typical code is figure out a couple of words and then write those down with the symbols, and then that'll help you decode the other ones. People have even found misspellings, so it's hard to spelling code.
Knowing the internet, I'm sure somebody already made a decipher guide anyways.
Yeah.
But, it's like, don't spoil it. Figure it out on your own.
Exactly.
If Fede ever makes a sequel to his Evil Dead remake, I would love to see what you described put in like the beginning of the movie or something.
Sure.
About 2 books and stuff. That'd be cool.
And there could always, I guess Bruce is retired from ASH, but
we'll have to think about that. I mean, everyone says they're retired, and it's like, oh, just one more.
Are you guys familiar with Blackjack Films on YouTube?
Oh, I think
Kid from Ontario reviews every kind of guerrilla film, basically, centered around King Kong. But he's got more information than I've ever heard of. Like all these versions of King Kong that people wanted to produce, like the French version and Japanese versions and things like that just never made it. And, the Universal film in the 80s, it never happened, and or 70s, it never happened. All this endless stuff and tons of trivia. And Anyway, they're fun little things. But tours of, Jurassic World, the theme park, and just anything dinosaurs. Everything dinosaurs and giant gorillas.
I was gonna say Full Moon Pictures. They were kickstarting a film that had stop motion creatures in it.
Primevals.
Yeah.
Yeah, the David Allen film. I'm really excited about that. There's the Kickstarter thing. I'm thinking of getting that because you get a Blu-ray with bonus features for $100. I think that'd be worth it.
Yeah, that would be cool. Oh, on the whole Bruce not wanting to play Ash again. See, I always figured they could always try to continue the TV series, but in order for that to work, they'd have to cast somebody else as Ash, though, and that'd be a tall order.
Wish they could do the RoboCop thing.
Huh?
If you go even younger,
That's what I was thinking of, actually. I was going to say that. My idea would be that since they already established in the show that whatever you do in the past doesn't affect their current present, would be to have them end up going back in time and pretty much grabbing the Evil Dead 1 Ash and bringing him to modern times. That way, the actor playing Ash could construct a new version of the character and not feel like he has to do a bad Bruce imitation and have him meet his daughter, and there's a lot of interesting stuff they could do with that.
That's possible. Plus, time travel, of course, is part of the Evil Dead universe.
Right, but until they decide to do a new show or a movie or something, I don't know.
Well, guys, I'm getting beat.
All right, I had a blast talking. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great all around.
Excellent. Good to meet you, and let's definitely do this again. I could go on and on for hours about any number of topics dealing with film. It's an unlimited subject.
Yeah, we'll do it sooner than later.
You take care.
All right.
Okay.
Any last words, Lot? Maybe he went away.
Okay.
All right,
take
Tom.
care.
Have a good evening.
You bet. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. Lots.
At the end, General Lots' internet went out. Hope you all enjoyed this. Until next time. Later.